All right, so it's another exciting episode on Ways Exclusive, and I am really excited to be here having this conversation. I believe I should be the first person he will be talking to after the launch of his book, Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System. Why did you decide to go to your constituency with this book?
This book is 11 years in the making. It's been a very painful book to write.
Do you have anything personal, any personal problem with Afe Babalola?
It's not personal, and this is very important for me. It is not personal, and it is the fact that it is not personal that has made it important. That I thank God that Chief Afe Babalola is alive and well. I thank God that there is nobody I have mentioned that is dead. Each and every one of the persons who happen to be just types. Because if it wasn't Afe, if it wasn't any one of the other persons, it would have been someone else, because it is the system that has allowed this to happen. The problem with us is that we have been lying to ourselves as a collective for so long that it is actually the person who forces us to confront the truth of our lies that we begin to attack.
At the time of this event, I think it was Babatunde Raji Fashola.
Yeah, he was the governor.
That was the governor of Lagos State. And, for your own, you expressed your disappointment.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was a legal practitioner, he is a senior advocate of Nigeria, and you would have thought that, that should have been enough for him to kind of like act, at least even respond to whatever it is the situation was.
Put it this way. BRF was the governor. I had no expectation of him being present in every situation, and I didn't expect him to be the one to deal with the problem. But I expected him to take an interest in what was going on.
All right, so it's another exciting episode on Ways Exclusive, and I am really excited to be here having this conversation. I believe I should be the first person he will be talking to after the launch of his book, Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System. No other person than Dele Farotimi, a friend of the house. Now he's a 3-time author, right? I believe so. And there's just a lot to unpack. Let me just state first that if you haven't seen this book, I think you should go and see it. It's important that we kind of like put some level of context to certain conversations that we're having. This really opened my eyes. I'm not a lawyer, but I am here to learn, as I sit with him, to ask a few questions based on what I had seen or I had read from the book. Thank you so much for joining us on Ways Exclusive.
Thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure being with you.
It's always a pleasure, but the only thing is that when you leave me, I go like we're here again. But we've not had a conversation for a very long time.
Yeah.
Especially the last time we had a conversation, we had not talked about so many things.
It's been a while.
It's been a very long while.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we were having the conversation the last time, we were supposed to talk about certain things in the future that eventually happened with the Supreme Court, especially when with the 2023 general election ruling. And when I now read your book, I said, it's a serious matter, because it kind of gave me a little insight into what happens within the judicial system. First of all, I'd like to ask, why did you decide to go to your constituency with this book? What was the reason behind that?
This book is 11 years in the making. It's taken that long to write it because the events about which I have written happened primarily in 2013 and 2014. But for some reason I really can't fathom, it became quite difficult to write the book. It's been a very painful book to write. I started writing it, I think the first draft of this book was finished about 9 years ago. But I couldn't bring myself, I wasn't convinced that I had written the story I set out to write. I wasn't happy with the narrative, so I trashed it. I tried again maybe like 5, 6 years ago. I still have that draft as well. I just wasn't happy. There was just something about the draft that I wasn't happy with. So I trashed that one again. And then I started writing it last year. And I realized that if I published it at the time, it would be received politically. A lot of people would forget that long before there was a campaign for Peter Obi. I'd been in the public space speaking to the putrefaction of our society. So it would have been very easy for people to target and misunderstand the intentions. So when I finished writing the book, it was around May, June last year. The Supreme Court had not delivered its perverse ruling, and neither had the tribunal. So I didn't want to release the book because I knew that if I released it in the midst of that political tension and all the partisan argument about the usefulness of our judicial system, the purpose and intention would have been lost. So I took my time, I allowed the moment to pass, and now the elections are over and we can now, with some clear eye, even though it doesn't appear as if campaign has stopped as far as the regime in power is concerned or its minions. They're still speaking as though we're in election time. But at some point, these would have to be released. And that is why I chose the 12th of June to release it to the public. All I've done in the immortal word of Patrick Wilmot is to put up a mirror for the society and the judiciary to take a look at itself. You may love the image you're seeing in the mirror, which is fine. And if you are not too happy with it, I imagine that that will be the point where you begin to take steps to correct what it is that you don't like. But all I have done is that I have given a truthful account of what I have seen within the judicial system. And it has taken the loss of the judiciary for Nigeria to become the useless place it has more or less become now. So if we must deal with our problems, we have to begin by fixing our judicial system. And that is why this becomes important.
Important. I mean, I'll be taking a bit of some lines from the book as we go on in the conversation, because you made very strong. What's the legal terminology for it? Well, I didn't want to call it allegations, but very strong. Like how you're so confident that this is it, right? And the first line that caught me, I think there's a lot of pen in the book. Say, I always knew that Nigeria is built on a foundation of lies, right? That the country of my birth is iniquitous, right?
Yeah.
Unjust and intricately evil. I had known this from my mother's womb, and I had never harbored any illusions about the existential nature of the evil empire in which we live. I mean, if you say you've known it from your mother's womb, that is like literally, right? Are you supposed to be a messiah? Are you supposed to be a prophet that kind of like foresaw the future? Why would you say this? And when we talk about the arguments of our foundation and how Nigeria was formed in itself, we've heard those arguments in various quarters that, that is the very basis of where we have a problem. And in building, you and I know that if you build a structure and there's already some level of fault within the foundation, it is very likely, no matter how grand your ideas are, no matter how beautiful your ideas are. So if you are coming from the position of the foundation, how did we get it wrong? At what point did we get it wrong in the foundation? And if we truly want to even say we want to solve the problem, how do we start to solve this foundational problem when we are far gone into the building?
You see, there is this analogy that I'm fond of using, and it's the one that says that if you are meant to be going to Sokoto and you headed in the direction of Badagry, at some point, you are going to have to admit to yourself that you are headed in the wrong direction, and then having factored in the fact that you are not headed in the right direction, now recalibrate your movement to head in the direction of Sokoto instead of continuing to go towards Badagry, because no matter how long you kept traveling on that route, you're not going to get to Sokoto. The problem with us is that we have been lying to ourselves as a collective for so long that it is actually the person who forces us to confront the truth of our lies that we begin to attack. We cannot become the country where precepts concepts and words come to obtain new meanings. If we say we are citizens, what we are saying without any ambiguity, for anybody to be a citizen, for a society to have citizens, you must be found on the rule of law. It would mean that both the governed and the governors are equally bound by the law. It must mean that the judiciary is one that deals with people blindfolded.
So
You don't see religion, you don't see ethnicity, you don't see political affiliations. That is the job of an independent judiciary, where in a society ruled by law. But in a situation where instead of us being ruled by law, even at the most elementary level, we're governed by the will of men. No matter how perfect those men might be, they remain men. And it simply means that for as long as we are ruled by the will of men, we're subject to their whims and caprices. It then means that you cannot have a fair measure for dealing with people within that space. The reality of the Nigerian situation is that neither you nor myself can be said to be citizens. We are just subjects. When you proceed from that and you then factor in the fact that those who are constitutionally, and I'll come back to that word constitution, charged with the duty of upholding the law, are already cognizant of the fact that they don't have laws to uphold, and that all they have to do is to uphold the will of men. So you have a policeman come to you. He's not dealing with you based on the law. He's dealing with you based on his evaluation of your person. So if he looks at you and he believes that you have the capacity to call somebody higher up, or if he takes you to the station, you have the capacity to converse with his superiors, he deals with you in a particular manner. If he sizes you up and he concludes that you are not possessed of the capacity to call up someone and you are a nobody, quote and unquote, he deals with you in another manner. If you took that to another level, you understand that if you're driving on the streets of Lagos, for instance, if you, as a private person, drives on BRT lane, the police will catch you. But if the bus driver, the Danfo driver, enters the same lane, they'll probably wave at each other because the bus driver had purchased the license for impunity when he paid his dues in the morning. So you are not dealing with a society that is governed by law. The first time I was slapped by a policeman, I was 16 years old. I wasn't doing anything wrong. There was a riot going on, student protest at Oscars in Ife. There was a problem at Unifair in those days, and there was a riot. And I was going from my hall of residence, heading to the school campus to go and read. I didn't realize that there had been a resurgence of the protest and police were chasing students around, cops and robbers. So me, I was coming out of my hall of residence, heading to the school to go and read, and I ran into a policeman. And, you know, it was like in a cul-de-sac, we ran into each other, and he slapped me. He slapped me so hard, my books fell down. And the guy was just looking at me with his hand on his waistline. And in that moment, you know, he just, in fact, the way I wrote about it, when I eventually wrote about it years ago, I said I received sense. He slapped me so hard, I received sense. Every illusion I ever had about the Nigerian police being a law enforcement agency disappeared. So if at 16 years old, I've already lost any illusion I had about the legality or otherwise of the law enforcement agency in my country and its relationship with the law, I might as well hyperbolically say that I knew from my mother's womb that I'm living in a country that is not governed by law. That is just the reality. Everything I've seen in my 56 years of being a Nigerian has told me that my relationship with agencies of the state is not predicated on my citizenship because I am not considered one. So if I am not a citizen, which is further strengthened by what I told you before, Constitution. I'm sure you'll be a member of some trade group, maybe like the Broadcasters or Journalists Association or something or the other. There must be an association you belong to, maybe even your town's union, maybe your old girls association. Any association you might care to belong to, you would have a constitution. That is the set of rules that governs your organization. This is a country where the people who are called citizens have never been privileged. Since 1963, they've not been privileged to write a constitution for themselves. It's been military adventurers who have written our constitutions. How do you then speak to citizenship when the most basic right of a citizen, the right to craft the rule by which he will live, has been taken away from that citizen?
So this leads me to a portion of the book that I had read that, whilst you were starting off your legal career and, after certain kinds of resignation, you got the opportunity to be like called to serve within the government, and you turned down that opportunity. Yeah. So, well, let me land. So I mean, because I've heard the argument Professor Yemi Osinbajo had said at some point that the only way to change the system or to clean up the system is to be within the system, be part of the system. That's the only way. Because, hearing you talk about constitutional issues that we have already and all of those things, the only way we can be considered, right, to be part of the people that should come in to say we want to rewrite the constitution or write a constitution that can benefit us as a people, is if also we have people in there that are campaigning to say that Nigerians have to be part of this system, to be part of the process. So if you were given the opportunity, right, I think it was the Lagos magistrate, I believe then. Yes.
I was being offered one.
You were offered and you turned down that offer, and I'm wondering, so why are you even complaining? Because you had the opportunity to be able to be in the system to solve the problem.
Let me put it this way. If, one, in the law profession, there are multiple branches and multiple areas from where one might impact the society. Yeah. When I was reading law, long before I even got any admission to study law, I had never at any point had the ambition and even the aptitude, for that matter, to become a judicial officer. I don't have the temperament. I have never desired it. I was offered a magistracy because lawyers are the least paid professionals in this country. And the person who was making the offer reckoned that I should, as a poorly paid lawyer, I think my salary at the time was 5,000 naira a month. So the thinking was that I should be grateful for a job that was at the time paying 60,000 naira a month, a Corolla car, and a flat. Yes, it came with a lot of perks, but it just wasn't me. If I had gone on to become a magistrate, I would have probably become the most useless magistrate in the world because it simply wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. If you appointed me to the bench today, I'll still say no because that is simply not my calling. The strength of any man is his capacity to discern his purpose. It is not my purpose to sit down as a magistrate and be adjudicating cases. What can you really do? That is one. The second reason, because that was over 20 years ago. Even today, if you recall, before the shenanigans at the election time, I remember saying variously, even on your program, that I wasn't going to accept a role in Peter Obi's government. Sure. The only reason I'm raising it now is so that I can tie it to the question you have asked. Everybody that I've worked within this system, because none of them have gone in with the intention of changing anything. They just want to be the ones operating the system. Mm-hmm. I am not interested in operating this evil system. My sole interest with the Nigerian governance system is its destruction. I don't believe that this system is capable of delivering any value to the Nigerian people. So for me to go and accept an office where I have to swear to uphold the Constitution, which I believe is the primary evil, will be completely hypocritical. So on that basis, the only office I can possibly accept, the only public office I can ever accept is the one that has a clear mandate to destroy Decree 24 of 1999 and then give the Nigerian people their own constitution and then restructure the entire governance system. That would interest me. But a system that is asking me to come what they're actually doing when they ask you to come and serve in any capacity is come and chop. They have been brazen enough to say it in the past. Your invitation is to come and chop, and you don't talk when you are eating. So I'm not interested in
You have to be quiet, but let's touch on something you just said that is very powerful, because again, I believe is one of the problems we have in Nigeria. The pay grade for people within the judiciary, right? Same as media. You know, some checks and balances that should even help checkmate any bad governance, right? Should be people within the media space and people, of course, within the judiciary. And you see this happen perpetually over and over again. Is it that this poor pay, has become a tool in the hands of leaders to continue to control what you want me to do, you know, how I want you to say it, how I want you to rule on it? Is that a deliberate attempt to actually kill the system so that nobody does what they have not been asked to do?
All right. I'm fond of explaining that our problems are built on three legs. It's like a tripod. You've got weaponized ignorance. You've got weaponized poverty. And then you've got weaponized religion. Weaponized poverty is what you're referring to. And that is where you deliberately underpay so that the person is kept servile and underfoot. What you have today is a situation where there is practically no Nigerian who is earning a salary outside of the top tier that is earning a living wage. It is particularly more so when you come to government workers who are deliberately underpaid and allowed to use the powers of impunity that they maintain. Because in the absence of the rule of law, you have to manage the rule of impunity somehow. So the people who are charged with the duty of preserving the rule of impunity are also able to administer the impunity in pursuance of their own interest. So when you underpay a judge or a magistrate or a policeman or a pressman, if you look at the press, for instance, the bulk of the press in Nigeria is now privately owned. But the private persons who own the media industry are largely persons connected to government. I've heard of cases where newspaper editors are told, I've given you the page, how you make money is your business. So the salary is not expected, and that has begun to, you'll find that reflected in our editorial styles. There are some stories you'll be reading in the newspaper and you know that somebody paid for this to be put there. And somebody else will then pay the next time around. You see something else for a rebuttal. You'll find interviewers incapable of asking questions that they are afraid of your answers because they don't want the owners of the station or friends of the owner to come after them. This, you know, when you talk about weaponized poverty, it seems such an abstract concept. But when you break it down to specifics and you then ask yourself, how do you explain that a policeman who is given a gun, who stands on the road, who actually tells you to your face, I'll kill you and nothing will happen, you know that they are paying him 50,000 naira. No matter the rank he's hanging on that road, at that checkpoint, he's earning less than 50,000 naira. A bag of rice is over, he can't buy a bag of rice. Just a miserable bag of rice he can't buy. He might have 5 children, his wife, himself. How is he supposed to feed on that money? So exactly. So you've already created the condition to make sure that he is incapable of upholding the law, but it is beneficial to a system that is designed to run on impunity to do that. Because that then renders that policeman more amenable to do the bidding of his political masters, and you can replicate that all the way down the line. The judiciary, the press, everybody. Poverty has become a real thing.
This is interesting. So I was just going to ask again, because some people have. I read the major case in this book that spoke about a land grabbing situation that involved. First of all, do you have anything personal? Any personal problem with Afe Babalola? Because you called a lot of names.
No, it's not personal. It's not personal, and this is very important for me. It is not personal. And it is the fact that it is not personal that has made it important. That I thank God that Chief Afe Babalola is alive and well. I thank God that there is nobody I have mentioned that is dead. Each and every one of the persons who happen to be just types. Because if it wasn't Afe, if it wasn't any one of the other persons, it would have been someone else, because it is the system that has allowed this to happen. But if we say that so that we might not be said to be against persons, we continue to ignore the ignoble acts of persons, the system will be further strengthened, and such evil would become the norm. It's already become the norm. And it found normalcy in our collective silence. We, in our little spaces, we elected to be quiet. We don't want to be labeled rebels. We don't want to be seen as spoiling anybody's name. We don't want it to seem like it's personal. But this is not personal.
Because I want to read something here. You said Afe has been corrupting the Supreme Court from ages past, and he has led it to commit the most, your words are quite egregious act of evil and wanton injustice. It says Afe knows where her ladyship does not know, or what her ladyship does not know, or pretends not to know, that justice does not live in Nigerian court. And you can get the court to do whatever you want. As long as you know who to speak with and who to pay.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Put it this way.
When I looked at this, I now said,
I'm writing about a man who is, I believe, in his 90s now.
Yes.
If I stole 10 million naira from you, for instance, now, it simply means that if you went back into my history, you'll find that I had stolen 10 naira from somebody before. I cannot suddenly change and become what I wasn't in my dotage. The level of corruption that I witnessed in this case, the brazenness of it, is not suggestive of somebody who is coming to the rodeo for the first time. This is a well-practiced person. This is the norm for these persons. Look, no matter how corrupt a judicial system might be, there are certain precepts and norms. It's like I want to count 1 to 3, and then I'm looking to skip 2. So I just say 1, 3. Where is the 2? So there should be some order, some processes by which you arrive at a particular decision. That is why the court have rules. You have rules of court, and that is why we have laws. But when you see the highest judicial body in the country flouting its own rules and acting in a manner that is suggestive of impunity, then you know that something is very abnormal in that situation. I have not written these words lightly. And I am eternally grateful to God that these persons are alive. They are alive. If I have lied against them, they have recourse. Every last allegation I have made, the proofs are in the court's file. I don't even need to be the one bringing out anything. The evidence in the court's own file proves my allegations. Clearly, beyond argument. There are no ambiguities here. It's a situation where when people become so powerful that they don't even care or believe that they are subject to any law. The law does not apply to them. The brazen impunity by which they did what they did made it impossible for, maybe somebody else might have been able to find peace and walk away and be telling the story as part of their moonlight tales, or maybe when they sit amongst their friends and they are sharing beer and cognac, maybe they might have talked about it as further proof of the putrefaction of our judiciary. But I'm not interested in beer parlor talk. It is the system itself. I'm not even interested in Affair and all the other people involved. It is the system that allowed them to be who they are and to do the things that they have done that I'm speaking to. If those ones are there, they're just collateral damage. They are not even, there is no damage. They are the ones who have caused damages. Yeah. So they are collateral beneficiaries of the story told because they are the operatives of the system. I'm not interested in their person, but the evil system that they represent is my mortal enemy.
So I like where you took the conversation to, because it then leads me to some of the arguments that we've also heard. That are you not speaking based on a small okay, so these conclusions that you're drawing about a big system as the Supreme Court of Nigeria, right? Is this not coming from just your interference with this small group of people? When you guys have a larger body, I mean, there are thousands of people within the judicial system in Nigeria, you know, but it then made me see this part where you said that you have seen injustice everywhere within the Nigerian court, that you're a lawyer with over 2 decades behind your practice, and you have interacted with the judicial system as a practitioner, as a victim, and as the aggrieved. It says there's no justice to be had in our criminal justice system. I have become convinced that the system itself, it's criminal and completely incapable of delivering justice to anyone, because the justice system is part and parcel of a governance system that cannot afford to allow the equality of the citizens before the law. This is powerful.
It's the truth.
So, but are you not drawing up this conclusion just based on your own? I have to be objective here.
Let me tell you.
So it's like, okay, so it's like I have dealt with, I've dated you, I've dated somebody else, and all of a sudden, I now say men are.
I get what you're saying.
All men are useless.
I get what you're saying, but let me show you something.
Yes.
Because of the evil done in the case I referred to, a lot of people lost their homes. Miscreants entered Nikon Town to claim that they are claiming possession of part of Nikon Town. They entered multiple estates in the Lekki axis in 2013 based on the strength of this fraudulent judgment. Those are persons who were affected. I told the story of a man on whose behalf I sued at the time. He had only 2 plots of land. I got judgment for him from that same system. So when I say that there is no justice to be found within the Nigerian legal system, I understand that it sounds like a sweeping indictment of the system. But if 65–70% proves to be true, that generalization holds completely true. That is the reality with which we are grappling. I have never come into the public space to talk about personal battles I am fighting within the judicial system. There was a case at the time I was writing this, even at the time I finished writing this, there was a case where I had been sent to prison almost for life until I paid 208 million that was owed by somebody for whom I stood shorty. I went through the gamut of the judicial system. I was convicted in the High Court. I went to the Court of Appeal. I never brought it to the public space. I didn't make it a subject of social media entertainment or anything like that because it's not personal. It's about testing a system. The matter went all the way to the Court of Appeal, and it was only in June last year, in fact, it was June 23rd, became exactly a year when the Court of Appeal discharged and acquitted me. So when I say the system is incapable of giving justice, I'm talking about systems. You would always find outliers within even an evil system. Even the judge that convicted me in that case is still somebody I consider probably one of the few judges in Lagos State you can't even induce with money. But it didn't make her any less unjust because she did what the system demanded of her. EFCC charged me, and as far as she was concerned in her thinking, because the EFCC had said so, it must be so. In spite of the evidence that were before her, she still convicted me, but I didn't hold it against her. I had enough faith to believe that any judicial system that is fair, looking at these facts, should free me. So I went on to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal indeed asked me to go. But does that mean that other people have not been unfairly dealt with by the system? No. I could afford to pursue my case. I could afford to fight through the system. But this was a case that should never have been taken to trial in the first place. But it went to trial because that's the way the system is rigged. This was a case the judge should never have sent me to jail, but she did, based on her own understanding of the law. But I went on to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said, go. But the point, the fact that I was exonerated by the Court of Appeal does not eradicate the fact that it shouldn't even have happened in the first place. But because the system is not designed to give justice, it is meant to punish. Once you are not one of those to whom impunity is applicable and you run foul of their legal system, the intention at every point is to punish. It's not to find the justice or the equity of the situation. So if anybody is finding any level of justice within our system or equity within our system, is either you're particularly blessed to find one of the rare judges on the bench, or you are particularly favored because somebody decided to do the right thing and read through your pleadings.
Okay, on that note, we'll take a very short break, right? When we come back from that break, there were other names that were mentioned that I would just like to touch on. And more importantly, recent happenings within Nigeria, that's almost similar to what I had read, especially with the land grabbing situation.
Even when you're even talking about land grabbing situation, go to Kano now and see the kind of sick pronouncements that are flying left, right, and center from the court because of the emirship of Kano. Look at the Plateau State legislators and look at what the tribunal came up with. The level of madness that has become epidemic in our judicial system is not suggestive of a system that is capable of offering equity or justice.
Okay, on that note, we'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, thanks for staying with us. And if you just tuned in, we're still here. It's Ways Exclusive, and we're having an amazing conversation. Very, very deep one, Sha, with Dele Farotimi. We're dissecting the judiciary system in Nigeria. And, just too many things to unpack from the conversation. So, I don't know if you've seen the viral video that went round. I think she's one of the House of Rep members in Kenya, when she says good girls don't get the corner office. And some have said that, some have argued that, in terms of all this, your goody two shoes, you want to be the just and upright lawyer. There's no amount, as in there's nothing to show for it, right? They've said you are not, is maybe because you are not successful, you're not this, and all this your bragados, dogotorachi is not taking you anywhere. Do you understand? So and this is the argument. When people get to this kind of level where you are now, they begin to then attack your, different things. They attack a lot of things, and they say, all this your good boy, whatever, where he carry you go, literally, where are you today compared to the people that, you have mentioned, the names that you have mentioned, see how far they've gone in and all of that. When you hear those kinds of arguments, how does it make you feel?
In the first place, I don't hear them. And I mean that. I don't hear them. The eagle does not concern itself with the cackling of hens. It's too far up. So the hens can cackle all they want. Can't hear them. I'm incapable of hearing them. Years ago, I wrote a piece. I titled it, "I Do Not Write for You." I don't do what I am doing so that people might applaud me or say, oh, is this or is that. And anyone who has any understanding of my background and who knew me from way back would also know that I'm not doing this for money. In the first place, I have given up more than anyone can give me to change my ways. I am where I am intentionally. If there is anybody in the Nigerian space who is more intentional about his words and his actions in relation to interventions in the Nigerian political space, I would love to meet the person. From the first time I came into the consciousness of the Nigerian public, I've made it very clear that my purpose is the destruction of this system. So I don't expect this system to reward me. So I have no expectation of any reward from this system. And the persons that they think they are looking to as exemplars of success are people I consider despicable. I am not writing for this generation, if the truth be told. I am writing down so that people who might be coming behind us might one day decide to navigate their ways out of the madness that we have all become immersed in, and they will know where we went wrong. So this is essential. Every book I have written till date, in fact, there are actually 3 books that I knew I had to write before I can start engaging in any creative work that might offer me any joy. Those 3 books, Do Not Die in Their War, Imperatives of the Nigerian Constitution, and Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System. Those 3 books were meant to be written before I could do any other thing with my creative capacities. And I have written them. Whether the people who read them today have any appreciation for them or not, I can't care less. Whether people believe I'm a madman, in fact, I prefer to be considered a madman. Because the moment you can say he's a madman, it allows you to ignore me. Abi? So you can dismiss what I have to say and conclude that I'm speaking out of my insanity. But I know that when the time comes and history is written and this period is being reviewed, because of what I have done, history will recall that there was one amongst them who wasn't crazy. And if that's the only thing that is done, in fact, I will go to my deathbed happy in the knowledge that history will absolve me. So that none of the things that they are doing, which I consider the cacklings of hens, affect me. The Latin people have this word. They say, aquila non capit muscas. It means that the eagle does not catch flies. It doesn't chase flies around. That's the dicta by which I live my life. I don't care about what any one of them have to say. I can't even hear them. I need to come down from where I am to come amongst the hens to hear their cacklings.
It's interesting that you mentioned whilst you were talking about how you grew up, you know, if they understand your background, your history. I love that part about your grandmother. You know, the fact that, you know, even in her little exposure and knowledge, she was able to take on the role of, you know, solving issues within, you know, the environment, and you know, she stood for what was fair, what was upright, and those were the premise to which you also saw and said, you know what, I think I like, you know, I would like to be this kind of a person. Do we have people like that?
Oh, there are many people.
You know, sometimes when I hear you speak, when I hear people speak, everybody's corrupt, everybody, you know, like, I keep wondering, so if we say all of these things, right, where do we now find the ray of light, right? Do we have people like that, you know, that actually put the interest of other people, that actually care about the well-being of other people, that can say, you know what, let me be fair in these dealings and all of that?
Nigerians are good people. Our people are not intrinsically evil. It's the system that is forcing a lot of behavioral changes that are making our people seem more and more beastly and unreasonable every day. But the Nigerian is no better or worse than the next human being. So it's a function of leadership and the governance systems. If the governance system does not punish honesty and reward evil, you will not see the proliferation of evil that we see in our society. But when you live in a society that punishes those who seek to do the right thing and reward those who do the wrong thing, which has become the right thing, because we've now inverted sanity. We've become so acculturated to madness that it is the person who is doing the right thing that is considered insane. That is what has happened to us. So there is nothing about us that is so intricately bad or intrinsically evil that we cannot respond to positive change. We can. We are more than capable. Look, the average Nigerian leaves Nigeria. It goes to Canada, goes to America, goes to Australia, the UK, and they excel. They get entrusted with public trust, and they excel. But the same Nigerian, he doesn't even get the opportunity. The system is designed in a manner that assures that those who are likely to do good don't even get there. The system is designed to work against the emergence of anything good. So it's almost like the system is poised to identify good, attack it, and destroy it. But it promotes and rewards evil constantly. That is the system we've built for ourselves.
So, I mean, speaking about systems, the recent issues around Lagos, in fact, I think I saw a report, was it today, that said areas around Shongo Tedo and I believe which other area now, I forget the other name. The Lagos state government is going to be demolishing illegal structures, you know, and I mean, I don't know, you've been following the coastal lane and all the demolitions that have been happening. You know, reading this book, it was a lot, the foundation for the story, as in the case you brought up, you know, was highly about land grabbing situation. Yeah. And to think that this was how many years ago? 11 years ago, this cases, yeah. and to see that, you know, it's still, in fact, I was just going to say that it's even now, even like, without empathy, without emotions, people's houses are being destroyed every day, every minute. Well, I mean, when you see these kinds of things happen, right, what comes to your mind? And, you know, how would you like people to see it? What are your thoughts? If people were saying, okay, what's your counsel about these kinds of issues?
You see,
because these people, you can't fight it.
When you have a state that has not found itself capable of providing mass housing, a state in which a bridge that is right there in Ikoyi, in Dolphin, became an housing estate where people are paying, they park cars, they have DSTV, they have all kind of established routine. There is a thriving community made up of people living on that bridge in Lagos. And then you find that it is the same state that is busy plunging more and more people into the homeless bracket because, okay, so you're demolishing the house because the person, okay, what did he do? He's encroaching on government land, all right? Can it be regularized? Nobody is asking those questions. Okay, so he's built contrary to what? There are multiple reasons why the government will say, okay, we're demolishing, but it shouldn't always be the first recourse. That is one. You mentioned the coastal road. You see, the original illusion to which a lot of Nigerians were responding was the assumption that this was about a contract that was given without due public tender, the impunity with which the contract was awarded to a business partner of the president, on whose company's board the president's son is sat. People were talking about all of that, and the government could not be bothered to respond. But I was looking at it, and I'm not sure I've even spoken about it publicly, because I knew going out that the least of the problem were the ones we were talking about. We were talking about inflated contract, lack of due process, and all this and all that. But it's actually a land grab. A lot of people have tried to ethnicize this and say, oh, landmark is a Igbo thing, and they were grabbing landmark. Landmark is probably the smallest loser. What about all the ancestral villages that are on the coast that have now been dispossessed simply because the alignment was changed. That alignment that has been changed, the extra land that is now being created, that is the crux. The enlargement of Eko Atlantic. That was the entire purpose of the thing. Maybe that coastal road might be built. Maybe it will never be built. Maybe it's only the Lagos end that will be built. I don't know. But what has been done there is not been done because of some public interest. It's because of the narrow, selfish interest of Tinubu and his cronies. And it's not really about the dispossession of landmark. It's about the dispossession of an entire stretch. People who have lived on the coast of the Atlantic, places like Okunmokpo, Okunaja, Lafiaji, Igbo Efon, Elegushi, Ikate, all that Goshen Estate area. This is not about a land grab. It's not about money. It's not just about 4 billion per kilometer of stupid road that is being built in the midst of hunger. No. It's about a land grab, completely unconscionable. And this is something that happens all the time. So that the state is busy demolishing houses, that nobody appears to have any regard or respect for laws and public order, that's not big deal. It's the normal thing in a society like our own. There is nothing there. There is nothing new. Where else would it happen? You have multiple laws related to public procurement, PPP laws, all kinds of laws that demands that public tenders must be had. You even have a road that is being, you've awarded a contract without EIA. It was only after you've awarded the contract and the road construction has started that we started hearing that because of the undersea cables, you can't do it. That is not a society that is telling you that it goes to any length to plan its expenditure or that has any respect for any rules or law.
This rule of law matter again, we're back to it.
You can't run away from the rule of law if you must build a sustainable society. If you go back to the foundational theories of the emergence of states, it is very simple. It says we were all living in the state of nature, and in that state of nature, life was nasty, short, and brutish because each person was doing as they please. And then they all sat down together and decided, let's find a state and let the state regulate our affairs and protect our lives and properties. That is the modern theory for the evolution of the state. But the key thing in that evolutionary theory for the state is that they submitted themselves to the state. The state itself is submitted to the law. So both the state and the individuals who have come together to found the state are submitted to law. But we are growing up in a society where the last thing in the consideration of those entrusted with public trust, quote and unquote, is the law. They don't care anything for the law. The law does not matter.
So what was your particular disappointment with BRF? Because at the point where this issue was happening, Babatunde Raji Fashola was the governor of Lagos State, right? I'll read a line again. I love this, your book. I have a lot of lines. It says the Lagos power elite is highly insidious. I mean, how do you pronounce this word? It is a closed group.
Insular.
Yeah, right? There are circles within the several circles that it takes the initiate to discern that there are neither religious nor political divides among Lagos ruling class. At the time of this event, I think it was Babatunde Raji Fashola that was the governor of Lagos State. And, you know, for your own, I mean, you expressed your disappointment.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was a legal practitioner, he is a senior advocate of Nigeria, and you would have thought that, you know, that should have been enough for him to kind of like act, you know, at least even respond to whatever it is the situation was. Why would you, why was this so?
Put it this way. BRF was the governor. I had no expectation of him being present in every situation, and I didn't expect him to be the one to deal with the problem. But I expected him to take an interest in what was going on. What he did was that he delegated to the appropriate officers, in fairness to him. He delegated to Ikpaye, who I believe was by that time, Ikpaye was his Attorney General, and the Solicitor General was Lawal Pedro.
Lawal Pedro.
And he simply walked away from it thereafter. I am of the opinion that given the sensitive nature of the matter and given because I had worked for him, he was my last employer, and I know his mental capacity. And I also know that if he had taken the time to read the case, if he had taken an interest in the brief, he would have seen very clearly the legal dangers that had arisen as a function of the corruption of that system. It became even more so because the title that required defense was the Lagos State government's own Gazette of Excision. So it was important that the state took an active role in the resolution of the matter. But he delegated, and the people he delegated to simply went to town, particularly Lawal Pedro. Went to town to feather their own nest, not to resolve the problem. So if I had any blame for him on this issue, it is the fact that he did not take
any interest.
The interest he ought to have taken, both as a lawyer and as the chief executive of the state, who issued the title originally.
It's so interesting because, again, these are the conversations that you hear in different quarters as to why we have certain problems unfixed. So it seems like the only time problems truly get resolved within the country is if I have a personal interest.
Yep.
You know, so if I don't have anything at stake, right, it means that everybody can burn. Do you have an idea of the number of people that were affected by these incidents? Because again, now, if we tie it back to what is happening within the coastal range and road construction and all of those things, these demolitions that are happening, we have lots of, I've seen videos, I stopped watching them because you see people crying. Right, you see people crying. Like, there was a woman that I think they had just moved into the house like 2 months ago, and the government came and demolished. So you imagine how you've struggled. Yeah. So, if you had a counsel to give the current governor of Lagos State about this demolition, especially with the houses, I could really not be bothered about what is happening because the coastal road, like you rightly said, it's another situation for another day. But where there are cases where people have actually built houses and all of those things, right? As a lawyer, what would you have, how would you have best approached it? Because again, it just seems like it's not my brother, it's not my sister, so everybody can burn for all I care.
That thing is a multi-dimensional issue, and we must understand that sometimes we are also at fault. If a person builds on the drainage right of way,
that house has to go.
That house has to go. If a person builds on a road right of way, where the land had been validly acquired and the person had notice or ought to have had notice, that's a different ball game entirely. What you find most of the times is that Lagos State government and its officials sometimes look the other way. Why is this development are ongoing? In some cases, persons would even have had their palms greased. And then when the houses are now completed and the persons whose job it is to enforce comes around, the person enforcing the rule, who is now interested in demolishing the house that he says has been built on the drainage right of way or the road right of way, is not looking at the fact that members of the same government, functionaries and organs of the same government had sanctioned the construction. So the hapless citizen has his house demolished. The government official who is complicit walks away free. So sometimes, as undesirable and painful as it might be to have these demolitions, we must also be able to tell ourselves the truth that there are times when they cannot be ignored, simply because the contraventions are clear and the negative impact of retaining them on the larger society would be much more. But it could be drastically reduced if the government would be more proactive. But for the Lagos State government, most of the time, especially this regime, is more about, is a revenue thing rather than a regulatory or environmental thing. They are more focused on money. So as long as the people are paying into government coffers until it becomes a crisis, it doesn't get resolved. And that is why you have multiple demolitions going on everywhere when it could have been easily prevented by simply not allowing the constructions to have taken place in the first place.
Oh, wow. This conversation is really interesting. So I have random questions for you, especially with the recent happenings. Then I'll come back to my final question, which will be, how do we clean up this criminal justice system? That will be my final question. But random questions. There was a recent change in the national anthem. You know, there was a recent change in the national anthem, right? I want to hear your thoughts on that, because a lot of people have been complaining that we are hungry and this is the national anthem with a change. And the same goes for the clamor to create a new state. I think it's Olu or something. That one I just went off, because in my mind, we're already complaining of an over-bloated system, right? And you're then coming up with a state creation, right? So two things, right? If you had a recommendation for the state creation, I would say that we should go back to regional, let them, because some of these states are actually not productive. Let them just merge, right? But that is my thought. I want to hear your thoughts on that state creation and the national anthem. Then we'll come back to our final question.
Well, first thing first, I'm told that the new old national or the old new national anthem
It's so confusing.
is actually an elixir for hunger. Anytime you are hungry, just sing it. Hunger will disappear. If terrorists, no, that I thought Akpabio said it has magical powers that we wouldn't have had terrorism if we had changed the national anthem earlier. Look, there is in literature, I think it's Kafka. He has this theater of the absurd, something along those lines, where the more outrageous the claim, the more believable it becomes because of the audience in which it is being played. Yorubas have this proverb. They say, "On fear tesile on kwala." That means that you have abandoned a cure for leprosy in pursuit of the treatment of ringworm. We don't seem to be a people governed by lofty ideals. We continue to chase inanities. I used the Latin maxim earlier on. I said, "Aquila non capit muscas." The eagle does not chase flies. That's exactly what we are doing. In the midst of all the problems that we have as a country, as a society, as a collective, what the rulers of Nigeria believe is most important is to change from the national anthem written by Nigerians to the one bestowed by the colonial masters. I frankly have avoided talking about it because I believe that it's just yet more distractions given to the people to be debating. Just keep them busy. Let them be talking about that. It is in the same light that I view the attempt at creating additional states. We have 36 states, 774 local governments. This was from an original 4 region as at 1963. You must also understand and tie this to my earlier position that we did not do this restructuring ourselves. It took a succession of military bandits. Go on. Took it from 4 regions, took it to 12 states. Muritala Obasanjo came, I believe they took it to 19. Babangida came, took it to 21. I think under Abacha it became 20-something, and then eventually it became 36. At no point did anybody contact the Nigerian people or consult them. The rulers of Nigeria simply decided how many parts they wanted Nigeria to be broken into. So now, based on this unjust unilateral restructuring of Nigeria from a federation of 4 regions, Nigeria moved to what is essentially a feudal autocracy of 36 emirs, 1 sultan, and multiple alkalis. And they are now talking about additional state. These are all distractions. The governance system is way too expensive at a time when we should be looking to streamline our spendings and reduce the cost of governance. They're talking about increasing it. Any additional state means another governor, another emir, another deputy governor, another house of assembly, other local government. So you find that the entirety of the existence of Nigeria is predicated on the maintenance of rulers and not on any developmental pursuit or anything beneficial to the Nigerian peoples themselves. So as far as that is concerned, I think in the first place, I believe they are distractions, and I believe they are a waste of time.
So, before I come to my final question, they say when you see a madman just being mad, you go and check the woman behind him. She has to be madder. You know, I was at your book launch and I listened very keenly to the words that were spoken about your wife. You know, we're in a place where, I mean, my mother has called me several times. My father will call me, "Oh, they don't talk like that for Nigeria." You know, they've said it several times, and these are the things that keeps us a bit afraid and bound to some kind of conditions to not say certain things so that you'll be politically correct and all of that. But you've had a partnership that over the years she's been very supportive, right? And I just wanted to use this opportunity to say well done to her. And if you had one thing to say to her, what would you say?
I wouldn't change a single thing about her.
Absolutely.
My wife is accepting of the fact that she's my primary caregiver. We've all agreed I'm insane.
Yes, so.
So in coming to that acceptance of my mental health condition, she has resolved that it is better to allow this guy to be himself so that he doesn't simply go start craving mad. So she's very supportive and she's left me to be myself and she's just learned to take me the way I am. So in reality, truth be told, that's probably my best asset right there, because I can't be this crazy and still have a crazy woman to go home to. So the fact that I'm allowed the monopoly of insanity in our marriage has worked for everybody.
Absolutely. And I was going to say that how do we find more courageous people? Because I believe that, which speaks to the last question about how do we clean up the system, right? How do we clean up the system? And, you have put out your own truth in this book. I believe that whoever feels disgruntled, you can always come out. You can reach out. We will also talk to you. But, I mean, this is your truth. Yeah. I'm trying to say that so that we are careful of or mindful of the thing Chimamanda said about the dangers of a one-sided
narrative.
One-sided story, right? I mean, if you feel like, the allegations are too strong and you want to also do a rebuttal, we're fine and we're open. And, I said that to ask, how do we clean up the system? Because you know why? The people that will clean up the system are the people.
Yeah.
It can never be these people in the political class. It can never be because, and when you continue to have these people, which is us, our families and whatever, that keep on saying, "I no talk like that, be careful," and all of that, So when you keep having that, how do we find the courage? How do we find the courageous people? And it is not because I don't believe in all these transactions of going to the streets to go and protest. Because it's
a waste of time.
It's a waste of my time.
I've never, ever in my life
said it in my life.
I've never supported street protests.
No, I don't.
We might get there. Don't get me wrong. But before we ever get to the point where Oladele Tomilola will support street protest, it would mean that the average man on the street of Nigeria is aware of why
Absolutely.
we have to do that. It can't be a group of Voltrons thinking that they can take on the system on their own. No. The people must be invested in the change.
And not only being invested in the change, the people must also, we must also get to that point where the average life of anybody in Nigeria matters.
Of course
because,
it should.
I mean, protests have been known to create a lot of things, right? It can cause a complete overhaul and change of the system.
Yes.
But it is only when people actually are empathetic and they value that, oh my God, my child is crying, why? But we are not there yet as a people where people value human life.
You know, those who have sought to change Nigeria from time immemorial, the Fellas of this world, the Bekor and Sam Kuti, the Gani Fawehimis of this world, they've engaged Nigeria by sheer force of their personal examples, and they believed to a very large extent, almost all of them, that by reason of their own example, they can get the people to follow and then they can change the system. I have no such illusions. I have no such illusions. The only thing I can do is to continually educate the people and confront them with the ugliness of their reality to the point where they begin to desire the change that I am showing them, and they are willing to get up and pay the price that they might have to pay for the change that they desire. The only reason the fraud of 2015 happened was because the Nigerian people, they outsourced the revolution that they sought. In a situation where you are looking at Buhari, a man who had been out of power for 30 years and done nothing with his life. He didn't increase the number of cows in his head. He didn't go back to pick up a certificate from any school. He did not write a single book. He did nothing. 30 years later, a bunch of known crooks went and unearthed him and told you that is the solution to Nigerian problem. The desire for change allowed that delusion to be properly sold, and the people actually believed in 2015 that Buhari was going to change Nigeria for them. But Buhari has done a fantastic job for all of us, and that was what led to 2023, where the people became invested in the change and they sought change using the electoral system. You and I know the story of what happened thereafter, and thanks to the judiciary, we are where we are today. Now, if you are going to change a system as recalcitrant as the one governing Nigeria, it would be because the average Joe on the street, Chinedu, Musa, Adekunle, Nedu, all of them came to the knowledge of the fact that if we do not change this system will destroy us completely. There is nothing sustainable about the trajectory of this system. Until that happens, Voltrons can do nada. So I'm not doing anything I'm doing believing that I can on my own change anything. If anything, what I have tried to do over the years is to force the mirror in our faces. People are looking away, they don't want to look at the reflection. But I am interested in forcing that mirror into our faces to the point where we have no choice but to confront the image that we are seeing in the mirror. I haven't written this believing that the system will change just because I wrote a book. But I have written this to make sure that the system is forced to confront the truth. Every time that a system is fighting against the truth, its loss is guaranteed. If I have lied, it becomes easy to discredit what I have said, to attack the truth of what I have said. That is if I have lied. But the problem they have right now is I have told the truth. I triple dare and quadruple dare any one of them to sue me. There is nothing I have said that I need to go somewhere to go and be looking for facts to back me up. All the facts are in the court's own file. So it is when we get to the point where the society is forced to, I've named names now. Let these persons come out and sue me. And the fact of the matter is that by the time you get to the point where the system has been completely unrobed and it no longer has the capacity to sell an illusion to the people, then we have gotten to the point of change. Until we get to the point where we all admit to ourselves that what we have is an unsustainable system that cannot take us into the future that we desire as a collective, nothing will change. So I have not written believing that the book I have written will change anything on its own. No. The society has to desire the change. The society itself must desire the change before anything might change. But I have done my own part. It might be the children coming behind us who would one day decide that where we are is not good. We need to come out of here. You know, to get out of a bad place, you need to know how you got there in the first place. What this book is intended to do is to catalog how we got here. We didn't get here by accident. We got here by design. And if you are going to unravel this madness, you would have to have a clear understanding of how we got to where we are. Maybe another generation from now, when people are trying to find their path out of the madness, because where we are is actually completely abnormal. How long this, we are keeping up a semblance of normalcy, but it is so completely dysfunctional that I don't know how long this can be maintained. When you have a situation where the average salaried worker cannot even buy a bag of rice with his salary, and then you are finding look, we are not in a good place. But the only way we can change our situation is by confronting the hard facts and telling ourselves the truth. If you are still lying to yourself that you have a functional judicial system, then there will be no need to do anything about it. But when you come to the knowledge of the fact that your judicial system is unfit for purpose and is not delivering either equity or justice, it becomes easy for you to begin to find ways out of that situation. So the totality of my own exertions is designed to ginger the society, propel it to confront the truth of the bad state of our reality and then do something about it. But we certainly cannot continue like this. We cannot. We cannot.
I don't think I have anything else to say, but other than I want to say thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a very, very deep conversation. There are so many things here, even in this one, because some might argue that this is just a one case scenario, right? But in that one case, it kind of like, like the onion
shows
peel.
you the way the whole thing goes, from the sheriff to the police to the judges to the courts. Is an entire ecosystem. Is an entire ecosystem, and until we are deliberate about changing it.
But do you think Nigerians would ever get to that point where they will be just tired and say, we have to change this?
Put it this way. I know that our situation sometimes mimics a capacity to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And it's almost always as if we have some inability to drag ourselves out of our mess. But I am a strong believer in the capacity of the Nigerian to change its circumstances. But I know that that change in circumstance can only happen when we first admit to ourselves as a collective that this is not normal. We need to come out of here. It's easy to point fingers at judges and senior advocates and policemen, but we, as individuals, as members of this society, we are not exempted from guilt. A lot of us have our own faults, including myself. We all have things we need to change if the society is going to ever change. Absolutely. You know that thing they say, that cliche, change begins with me, is real. If we do not commit to changing our society, it will not change. It will not change.
Absolutely. So let me call the title of the book again, Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System. Omo, you need to go and read this book. I can't even explain it to you. I'm not a lawyer, but the kind of things I read inside this book, just it gave me a lot of shivers in my spine. And I am just hoping that the more some of these things come out, I always say that it's not in the big things that change happen. It is in the little things as simple as this conversation. Maybe it will spark up somebody's curiosity enough to want to go and even like inquire and learn more. You know, history was eroded from our educational system intentionally, because if you talk about going back to history, where would the people go back to go and check? There's really nothing. So it's important that we start to intentionally live. I say that for us to succeed, you must be very intentional about it. And if we want to change, there has to be some level of intentionality for that change to happen. But thank you so much. It's always a pleasure having to sit with you. And this book, it unpacks a lot. I'm actually looking forward to that rebuttal. Me, I want them to answer so that we will just carry the way you carried popcorn inside this thing and you were watching like the movies. We said we want to carry popcorn and see how it goes, you know. But I'm hoping that, you know, this would actually spark up the necessary cleanup that the judiciary, criminal justice system requires.
It's the system itself that is criminal.
Abi,
it's the system itself that is criminal.
Nigeria and its criminal justice system. Yeah. Okay, it's the system that is the criminal.
It is the system itself that is criminal.
That's a stronger legal. Even the name. Now the name, they resonate.
Persons who should be in jail are sat in judgment. That is the system we've built.
It is well. I hope you had a fantastic time listening to Daily Fire to Me. We're hoping that this book, you know, would actually spark some necessary cleanup that we require within our judiciary system. Thank you again for watching. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 8 p.m. as we bring another great conversation to your screen.